This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Today is Wednesday, October 14th. Halfway through October already. This year is just flying by, and I say the sooner 2020 is done, probably for all of us, the better. It's been a very unusual year, that's for sure. Today we're going to talk about September trends, what's happened both nationally and locally. And I'm probably going to be reiterating what a lot of you have already are experiencing working out there in the real estate world right now. It's been pretty interesting times. So let me go ahead and get started here, and I'm going to talk a little bit, first of all, what's happening on a national basis. And it is very interesting. I was kind of going over what we were thinking was going to happen back in February, kind of looking over some of the earlier predictions and things. And we were all thinking when COVID first hit, how we were going to have our 2-week stay at home and then hopefully get back to normal work again. And we were going to have that opportunity when all of a sudden everything just really dropped off the face of the earth to work on our business, to work on connecting with our clients, working on our referrals, doing all that, because again, we thought everything was going to be very much in a downward spiral for some time. And yes, we did go down for a time, a steep down, but then we also have come back up very, very quickly in what's called a V-shaped recovery. They talk about the different kind of economic recoveries. They talk about V-shape where you go down and you come right back up. The L-shape where you go down and stay down. That's the scary one. Then they talk about different ups and downs that people will experience in different types of economic recoveries. And they're saying that in some kind, our recovery's been kind of like the Nike swoosh down and can kind of been up on a more gradual basis. But with housing, as we have all experienced, especially locally, it has been very, very much V-shaped and very strong V-shaped up on the up. So it's been, we are now at a point in which our housing is exceeding pre-pandemic levels. And this is across the country. This is nationally. And again, for us, it's way beyond that. So this is what we are seeing here. So this is the Housing Recovery Index. This again is from Realtor.com with information provided from NAR. If you go with a baseline starting February 1st, and you say that was 100% of what is in this index, and the components of this index are demand, supply, price, and then time of market. So those 4 components, economists like to mix all these sort of things together, and I think this is a really good index to look at. So in February, we were going up. We all know how quickly everything was exceeding and moving upward in February. And then, of course, COVID hit the beginning of March, and we crashed. We went way, 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 way down to way below the baseline. And then since May, we've been coming up and up and up, and now we're up way beyond, well, I shouldn't say way beyond, but above where we were in early March. And so if you look at that, the component, it's showing, again, across the country, we have recovered in housing. Definitely back to this, we were, again, breaking records back in February, and then now we're back to where we were across the country. So here's a year-over-year change in key metrics. So again, looking at what is happening, comparing this year versus last year. So in showings, we are up 60.7%. This is amazing. Purchase of apps. So apps up 25%. Pending deal, purchase applications. So these are like people buying loans, up 25%. Pending deals up 21%. Existing home sales up 10.5%. And new home sales up 43%. That is all positive stuff. On the negative, which is what we all know, existing home inventory is down 39% and new home inventory is down 33%. Builders cannot keep up, and we do not have enough existing resales on the market. We all know that. For every new sale we have so much interest in it. Again, key changes in our metrics. So here's the question. What's going to happen? Can we keep this up? Is this market going to continue on? So if you look at things like here, we're going to look at, in the United States, total spending by all consumers as compared to the beginning of the year. So we all know we have been in a recession and we have a lot of people still out of work. So if you go with a baseline of January 1st, again, when COVID hit, spending across the country dropped tremendously. It went down 32% over where we were when we started. But we've been gradually coming back up, and spending by consumers, again, this is showing economics across the country. What does the consumer think? We were all at the beginning holding our money, not sure what's going to happen. But now people are buying again. People are definitely out there shopping. You just look around downtown, you see people popping in and out of stores. You see people very much actively involved in purchasing things, and that's good for the whole economy. We're still down 4% over where we were in January, but again, a massive amount of recovery compared to where we were. So change in consumer spending since January 1st. This is the country again. So where are people spending? What states are really experiencing a lot of spending versus states that are still under? So all these red states here, Oregon's one of them, is down over 10% since January 1st. So why is Oregon still down like that? Again, think about what we are dealing with in Oregon, and also states like Hawaii, California. We deal an awful lot with tourism in our state. And yes, we are seeing a lot of tourism in Bend now, but there's still a lack of tourism in different parts of the state. Hawaii definitely is very much impacted. So consumer spending is down in certain states that seem to really rely upon certain things, but in other states, it's definitely up. Montana up 8.7%, Idaho up 3.2%, Texas up, Florida up. So there are states that are definitely having a change as far as where people are spending. And again, we're down in our state quite a bit still, but locally we are seeing changes. Again, the United States as a whole, consumer spending is still down roughly 4%. So here is the Bureau of Labor Statistics unemployment rate as reported. So we all know, we've looked at this chart before when COVID first hit. January, we're running along around 3.6, 3.5%, 4.4 in March, and then of course in April, a huge spike up. But since April, we have gradually been going down. We had 4 months above 10%, August 8.4, now September 7.9. Still too many people unemployed, but way, way better than what it was. And of course, in January and February, when you're below 4%, it's basically considered almost total employment. For anyone who wants a job, they can find a job. It's, I know locally, even locally now, you still see a lot of help wanted signs. And if you walk through, my husband's gone through Albertsons recently, and he said the loudspeaker while he was shopping was saying, we're now looking for people to work here, people to look here. So people can find work locally if they're looking for work. But still, across the country, it's still too high for people who are out of work. So here is, when people talk about the recovery we're having post-COVID, post-pandemic, if you look at the unemployment comparison against other times in which we've had great unemployment, the number of months of unemployment greater than or equal to 9%. So 9% or higher, which is really high unemployment. The Great Depression. My parents lived through that. They know what it was like. 108 months of unemployment greater than or equal to 9%. That is a massive amount of time. Now, the Great Recession, so recent for us. That was 2008, 9, 10. The Great Recession, that we had 30 months of that, 30 months, long time, but it was nothing compared to where we are now. The 1980s oil recession, 19 months of that, so that roughly a year and a half. But our recession, in which 9% for this year, 9% or higher and greater unemployment, only 4 months. So if you look at the comparison about what we had, we've dealt with before, This year, 4 months of unemployment greater than or equal to 9%. So that makes a big difference as far as what Americans are experiencing. So here is also a very interesting chart which shows about mortgages and active forbearance. So forbearance, again, if you're not familiar with the term, is putting off paying your mortgage. It's getting being granted a relief from making your mortgage payments by your mortgage company, saying, yeah, well, you can delay making your payments. We're going to tack it on the end. There'll probably be some penalties and interest, but we're not going to foreclose on you yet. So the number of mortgages active forbearance is decreasing. So when COVID first hit, there was quite a few. These are in millions of people. So quite a few people applied for that. Now, a lot of people don't even know this was this is something that they could do. They could contact their mortgage company and ask them, can we, because I've lost my job because of COVID, can I put my mortgage into forbearance so I don't have to be making those monthly mortgage payments? Which is a wonderful thing for someone who's dealing with this. Banks do not want to foreclose on the home, but they do want to work with their people who they are granting their loans to in order that they do not have to do that. So this is the number of loans that were in forbearance, and as you can see, it's going down. This means people are back into paying their loans. People have gotten their jobs back. They're back into working and paying their loans. And so this is a really positive movement, showing that fewer and fewer people are actually in forbearance. So what does this mean going forward? We have to look at 3 different things as to will we be going into more active issues with housing going forward. There are 3 things that we're looking at for that: inventory, equity, and what do the experts say. So with the idea of inventory, here is, again, making comparisons going back to 1999, when we really were having housing issues, when we got to a point in the Great Recession here of having well over 12%, 12 months of inventory of homes for sale. This was when we had a buyer's market. Again, more than 7 months of inventory available. And again, we've had this a lot during recent times when we had so much inventory on the market, so many listings available, and prices were going down and down and down simply because we had people who were in foreclosure. They've had notices of default filed against them, and we were dealing with short sales, and we were dealing with people who had gotten to a point of having terrible credit situations, lost their jobs, couldn't afford to pay their loan, and as a result, we were definitely in a situation of a buyer's market. However, we are not in a buyer's market today. As you know, we are in a seller's market. We've been in a strong seller's market since coming out of the recession. Again, these are national statistics. Locally, we have less than a month's supply of inventory in Bend. We are in a very strong seller's market. And so, are we going to have housing issues? Our housing issues are connected with the fact we have no inventory. So again, this is an issue for us. Does it mean we're going to have a market crash for housing? No, it's total opposite of what happened back when we were in these terrible months, times of dealing with the recession. We also have much better lending practice. Think about it. People who are qualifying for loans nowadays have got to prove they can pay that loan. And so, yes, with COVID, some of these people who are great people paying their loan may have had issues having lost their job. But again, they're getting their jobs back, and they're coming out of their forbearance issues. So here's also something to think about. So we had inventory. We also now have equity. Think about equity. So people who have equity in their homes, very high. So in 2020, there's 42.1% of people across the country who own their homes free and clear. They have no debt on their home. So their equity is 100% what the value of that home is. We also have another 16.6% who have between 60 and 100% of equity in their home. So this is a huge amount of people with a lot of equity. Of people who have less than 10% equity, it's roughly 10%. So very, very, very few people with are having equity issues with their home. Homes have a lot of value in them, which is why we're talking about, we all know that long term, people who have homes, it's been the #1 wealth creator across the country for many, many years. People trust that when you are in the movement of trying to build wealth for yourself, buying a home has been the #1 way of people doing that. And it's true, especially right now, equity in your home, building wealth. So here are projections on future home prices. So if you look at all these top leading indicators, this is what they're thinking of. The single star is for the current year. The double stars are projections for the next 12 months. So look at NAR. They're predicting for the current year, we're going to go up 4.3% across the country in home prices. Fannie Mae, 4.3%, Zillow, 3.6%. So we're looking for most of the indicators thinking between 3 and 4% increase on future home prices. We all know locally that's totally different. It's far more than that, but still, this is across the country, and what we're predicting. Only one indicator, it's Indicator House, thinks we're going to have price reductions. And I suspect as time goes on, these are all going to kind of reflect more what we're seeing across the country. So as we were talking about lending practices, we are not seeing, gosh, I know some of the early calls we got when COVID first hit is, well, I think I can come back to Bend when all those housing markets, when the housing market crashes and I can get deals back on Bend housing. Well, they should have bought then versus now. If they thought they were going to get a deal now versus what they could have gotten 6 months ago, again, the market did not crash. The difference from the increase in delinquencies following the housing bubble is so different. Lending standards have been solid over the last decade, and most of these homeowners have equity in their homes, and they will be able to restructure their loans once if they are employed. And that is so true. We are seeing that happen. And the one obstacle, as we mentioned and we talked on, is the inventory levels. And so since the beginning of COVID, nearly 400,000 fewer homes have been listed compared with last year, leaving a gaping hole in the U.S. housing inventory. As a result, home prices are accelerating at double last year's pace, and that's from Realtor.com. So we've had fewer homes listed. In some cases, that's people being afraid to list their homes. In some cases, it's like, well, I'm off moving where I have to move. In some cases, it's like, I don't want people to be traipsing through my house that could be bringing COVID into my house. But across the country, we've listed 400,000 fewer than last year. And so we do have a huge gaping hole in our inventory. This is the seller traffic index, which is showing where we are lacking inventory. So seller traffic, obviously Oregon, it's weak. It's very weak. We have fewer homes than we have demand. Stable are in the light blue. So Washington, it seems like it's pretty even there. Very, very strong. Wyoming, excuse me, I should say strong. Wyoming, North Dakota, Mississippi, Alaska, Connecticut. So these are places in which it seems like they have a better amount of inventory. Stable, Texas, but again, look at all the gray. The gray is where we do not have enough inventory for the demand. Obviously, we're one of those states that's definitely experiencing that right now. So year over year change in listings. So the orange line is the total listings, and the green line are the new listings. And so you can see we get new listings, they immediately go into contract. So total listings are dropping more and more. So and we're seeing this in our market too. We have way fewer listings now than we did a year ago. It's a new issue that we're having. We definitely need more inventory for the demand that we have. Here's another one here from the National Association of Realtors. So here's existing sales, and here's listings. Here's new homes, and here's listings. So there's great demand, insufficient listings, down 39%, 33% of new homes, just not enough. Here's another one too, suburban areas outperforming urban areas during the recovery. We've talked about that quite a bit, the fact that there are more people leaving urban areas. There are still prices going up in urban areas versus suburban areas, yes. And there are still property sellings, yes. But they're selling faster in suburban areas than they are in urban areas. We're also seeing the percentage of online shoppers more increase in suburban areas than in urban areas. And again, the number of homes for sale, fewer available as a percentage of the demand in suburban areas than in urban areas. Still less than are available overall, but more people are moving here. And I would like to say that in some cases there are microcosms in the country. I did a post in Facebook. I was given a link to, thank you for sending that to me, about how Bend is now the second fastest growing city in the country. Mid-sized city, I think it's even the #1 in some categories, and that's dealing with things from jobs availability and economic growth and all that sort of stuff. So there's microcosms. We can look at Oregon as a whole, but Bend, as we all know, every market is its own unique market, and Bend is definitely that. We are seeing such an increase within our market. It's hard to keep in contact with. Now, as far as new homes, according to John Burns Consulting, there's another economic person, builders we spoke with in the active adult space told us standing inventory numbers are low, and some are tripling the number of standing inventory homes they produce to satisfy demand. Some are also simplifying what they offer in their homes, a process that streamlines housing production and keeps new home prices more attainable. So in other words, they're building more, simpler, probably less frills homes, quicker to build because there's so much demand. These are builders across the country. Also, something to think about too, as homeowners gain equity in their homes, they are more likely to consider using that equity to purchase a larger or more attractive home. The wealth effect of rising equity. In today's housing market, fast rising demand against the limited supply of homes for sale has resulted in continued house price appreciation. We are seeing, a few years ago, the large homes on Aubrey Butte had less demand. The voluminous, big 5,000, 6,000 square foot homes were not as in demand as the smaller, more streamlined homes that seem to capture what people were looking for at that point in time. Now we're seeing, no, people want the bigger homes again. They are looking for places that can have room for the kids to be doing their schools from home, for the adults to be working from home. They're looking for that kind of home again. And it's been really interesting to see when I talk to you, when you're working with your clients, what they're looking for. So anyway, home appreciation, we're starting to see people even build the buy up thought process instead of the move down process. Here's one other thing to look at too. This is the year-over-year homeowner equity gain. So this is from Q2. So it doesn't even include third quarter. I'm curious to see what the third quarter stats will show. But homeowner equity gain across the country, very, very significant. In Oregon, we're among the lower states. We've had $9,000 appreciation in Oregon compared with the year before, again, across the state. The big increases, Montana, $29,000 in equity increase over the year before. Huge increase in these values. Idaho, we know a lot of people moving to Idaho. Arizona, 20,000. So again, there's a lot of demand out there, and people are seeing that reflected in how much the values of their homes have gone up. There's not a single state that's showing a decrease in home equity. So the thing that helps us as real estate professionals is to recognize that the more facts we can provide to people, the more value we show as real estate professionals. And we give them information that can provide something of value to them, that we know our stuff. We will show more credibility, and people will respect us more, and then they are more likely to be working with us moving forward in their home purchases and sales too. So this is again what's happened on the nation. So let's look at what's happened locally. So this is, I'm ahead myself. So this is where Ben Premier is. September 2020 versus September 2019. I show this every month so you guys can see where we are. So in 2019, we had 14 listings, new listings for September 2019. In September 2020, we had 23. So that's up 64% of listings. That's fantastic. The volume of those listings from $6,000 to over 12. So I'm thrilled. Listings, as we know in this market, are key. If you have a listing, you're going to have a sale. It's almost given. Now, for pending contracts, this is also a huge increase. We had 37 pending contracts in 2019. In 2020, 64, up 73%. And look at the volume. We went from $16 million in volume to $41 million in volume. Huge increase. So we're selling a whole lot more, plus the average listing price has just gone up so much that the volume of what we're selling is up tremendously. Closed. We had 48 closings in September of 2019. We had 73 in 2020, up 52%. And again, the volume of our closings from 22 million to 37 million. So year to date, 2019, we went from 353 year to date to 378 year to date, from 174 million year to date in 2019 to 203 million in 2020. Big increase. So you guys are working hard. I know you are. The thing that's fascinating, another thing that's fascinating to me is the number of deals we've written this year. We are roughly 850 deals, I think. Now, again, a lot of these are dead deals. This is multiple offers, all that sort of stuff. But that's a lot of work that you guys are putting out there. When we have a listing that gets 10 offers on it, those are all considered work that we all have to record. As you remember, you have to turn in all your dead deals as well. They all have to be recorded and filed in case we have needed to reference them again in the future. So it's a lot of work that you have put out. Go on to the next one. So here has been residential. If you look at for September, and again, this is from MLS. It includes Sun River, so I don't like these charts as much as I like others, but it does show where we are with numbers of listings. So the red is active listings. You can see active listings are below new listings, which are below sold listings. This is the second month in which we've been experiencing this. We have fewer active listings than we have sold listings and new listings coming on board, which is what is driving down our absorption rate. So anything that hits roughly a month's supply, this includes Sun River, the absorption rate if it hits the market, it's going to be absorbed in a month. Listing prices, active median list price up over 700,000. The median new median list price is below the sold median list price, which is roughly 550, something like 540. Sold to list ratio, we all know multiple offers are driving it up. So if you put a sales price out there, you're going to get it maybe even over that. Days on market have dropped tremendously. And then the price volume, active listing price to sold prices to the listing volume. So we have a lot. Again, we're selling everything that hits the market. So our sold volume is going up, but our active listing volume is way down, which is reflected in our lack of inventory. This is Ben stats for September 2020 versus September of 2019. I'm comparing month to month for Ben single family residential. This is significant. In 2019, we had 900 active listings for Ben single family residential. 250. We're down 73%, 72%. New listings that hit the market, 274, just 274, 218 in 2019. So we were up 25%, but new pendings, 473. So again, new listings that hit the market, 274, but new pendings, 473. We are up 117% over the year before. Sold volume up 30% over the year before. Excuse me. And the volume, again, the value of the listings went from 115 million to 191 million, up 65%. The average sales price went from 530 to 670, up 26%. So that's when we're looking at national stats and they talk about 3-4%. Again, that's a national average. Here in our local market, look at the value that have gone up over the year before, up 26%, both average sales and median sales in the price of our home. And the percentage of list price, this is reflecting 100.5% multiple offers driving prices up. And months of supply, this figure always is changing as people are late putting their solds into MLS. When I did pull these stats, it was at 0.8 months, so that's roughly three weeks and a few, versus 4.7 months in 2019. So it is extremely, I find these stats very interesting, and it's something that we need just to be aware of. And so when you're working with clients and they're asking, well, yeah, and someone new, well, I don't want to offer list price, and I think I can get it. And when you tell them this property just hit the market, it's priced under 500,000 in Bend, and it's a nice house, you're going to have to offer list price or even higher if you're having any chance of getting the property. Coaching your clients and letting them know what the reality is of our market is significant. It's so significant as far as being able to help them in making their sale happen. So here is the final thing I wanted to share with you. This is as far as our data and our stats. I have a couple other things to talk about though too. This is the market ranking report. This is showing everything year to date, all search criteria, it's all categories, residential, mobile home, residential income, everything commercial across the board as of, this is through September 30th. And this is listing or selling offices, and this is sold status. So you can see that Ben Premier is still firmly in number 5 position. We've had volume, in this case, if you look at sold stats, that means in some cases we've been on both sides of a transaction. We have had $213 million in volume in that category. So firmly in 5th position. And when you consider the numbers that we have within our brokerage compared with the numbers of people who are in some of those brokerages ahead of us, again, 52, 53 people, compare with brokerages that have well over 100, 130 people. the percentage of production for you is enormous, absolutely enormous. I'm just amazed at what you are able to do. You guys work really hard, and it's reflected in what you're able to do. So great work, and pat yourself on the back for that. It's a lot of work, and you are treating real estate here as your career and doing a great job by it. So this is phenomenal. So I'm going to open this up for you a second before I go into something else here. I do have a couple of things I really want to share with you. So I'm going to expand. Anyone have questions on any of this or comments about anything on this before we get on to our next topic? If you do, just go ahead and unmute your mic and say something or put up your little chat so I can look at that. If not, I'll move on to the next. Again, a lot of work here. So here's the next thing I did want to talk about. So moving on to this, because this has become a question that we've had in a number of situations this last month. We're dealing with the topic of having a tenant in a property that we have listed, and how do we deal with that tenant in the property? And we've all heard the governor's moratorium on evictions based upon because of COVID, they cannot be removed for cause of not paying their rent. And that is true if you're a landlord looking to evict someone for non-payment of rent. But Senate Bill 608, which is statewide rent control, we are still under statewide rent control as far as dealing with tenants in a property. And it is a bit of a challenge because we know statewide rent control has limit what we can and cannot do. So if a buyer for a property has a tenant in there, and the intent of the buyer is to use this property as a rental property, and that buyer has lived in that property for more than a year and is on a month-to-month tenancy, they cannot be removed for anything but cause. They cannot. They have the right to live in that property per statewide rent control. The way they can be removed is if the buyer intends to move into the property themselves, or the buyer or one of the buyer's family members intends to move into the property themselves. In that case, if the person has lived in that property for more than a year and is on a month-to-month tenancy, they have to be given a 90-day notice upon from the date that they get a ratified contract. So it can't be upon listing the property, because again, you don't know who is going to be purchasing the property. It could be someone who intends to use it as a rental, and in that case, that tenant has the right to be in there. So so here are the qualified landlord-based reasons to terminate a tenancy without cause. So either the demolition or conversion of the unit to a non-residential use, the repair or renovation that renders the unit unsafe and unfit for occupancy. Again, the landlord or immediately family member is going to move in. Or this is the fourth one. This is the one that we're dealing with mostly. It's the sale to a person who intends in good faith to occupy the home as a primary residence if the dwelling unit is sold separately from another dwelling unit. If using the landlord-based reason, landlord must provide tenant a 90-day notice and relocation expenses of 1 month's rent if they own more than 4 rental units. So now, if they're in a month-to-month tenancy, the first 12 months of occupancy, the landlord may terminate the tenancy without cause with a 30-day notice. So if you're dealing with a rental in which the tenant has lived in there on a month-to-month less than a year, they can be given a 30-day notice. You don't have to give cause. There's no issue with that. But after that first 12 months, they have to provide them with notice that the buyer for that property is going to be occupying the property. And then they have 90 days to evict. We've had situations in which we've had the need of a buyer to move in sooner than that. And so in that case, there's still something called cash for keys. If the landlord wants to pay the tenant to move sooner than 90 days, we've had some people make that attempt. We've also had some issues with tenants being non-cooperative for showings. Even though they may have a lease in place or a tenant landlord agreement that says the landlord has the right to sell the property and the tenant will cooperate with all showings. We've had some violation of that, say we're not going to do it. That's a challenge to work through, and it's not our place as the person representing that seller to negotiate directly with their tenants. It's really between the seller and the tenant. Or if they have a property management company, it's the property management company and the tenant to work through that. We've had some situations in which the tenant has agreed to allow us to go in there and film the property with a Matterport, so at least buyers can do a walkthrough of the property virtually. But it all comes down to ultimately that buyer needs to be able to see the house, needs to do a home inspection, and needs to be able to get in there for those sort of things. And it's something we're trying to work through. Does anyone have questions on this? Because this is a big deal right now that we're working through, because tenants, a lot of them have heard, well, I can't be evicted. No, this is for selling the property. We are still the governor's moratorium on evictions for non-payment of your mortgage of rent due to COVID doesn't pertain to evictions in the event that the seller is selling the property and the buyer will move into the property. So that still is in place, and the seller has the right to evict their person due to the fact the buyer is moving in. Questions on that at all? Because there's confusion out there. I've run this by legal hotline, and we are using this document produced by the Oregon Association of Realtors an awful lot to help us work through this.
I do have a question. I haven't read this thoroughly right now, but if a tenant was there for a year, and after the first year went to month to month,
yes,
are you basing the month to month, doing the 30-day notice based on that? Or
no,
it's over a year.
They've been there over a year. Yeah, if they've been there over a year, say they had a 1 year lease, and after that lease they roll into a month to month,
right,
and they've lived there more than a year, then the seller, of course, has a right to sell their property. But if the buyer intends to move into the property themselves, or one of their family members will be moving into the house. I mean, last week we were talking about a situation in which our client is a grandmother who intends to purchase a property for her granddaughter, in which if there is a tenant in place, they still have the right to evict that tenant with 90 days notice. It has to be 90 days notice, Colleen, and the 90 days starts at the point of time when there's a ratified contract.
Okay, thanks.
So that sometimes is a problem when you consider that most loans, if they're purchasing the property with a loan, that's a 90-day loan lock or a 90-day time frame. You have to work with your lender to make sure they understand that, and maybe even negotiate the cost of the loan lock with the seller. If that's something hard to do though in this market, but it's so dynamic. Sellers can take all kinds of offers, but having a tenant in the property is harder than it used to be. That's for sure. If the intent is to get the tenant out so that the buyer can move in or their family member can move in. Anyone else have questions on that? Any other questions, guys? One other thing I wanted to share with you before I'm done today is I'm just going to go to my blog. I wrote a blog yesterday about what's happening in the third quarter for luxury homes, because luxury homes have become a big part of what's happening. It's interesting what now qualifies as a luxury home. Luxury homes, when we first opened our doors 10 years ago, we were looking at anything over 500,000. Then we kind of moved it up to 700,000. Now a luxury home is probably $1 million or higher. But there are properties that are selling for $1 million or higher that just a few years ago would be selling for 600,000. So the definition of what it is, it's still a lot of money. Don't get me wrong. But so when I pulled up these stats here, this is not September. This is actually 3 months of activity. So this is actually third quarter through September. So if you look, these lines here, this bar graph shows what happened in 2018, what happened in 2019, and then what's happening in 2020. This first in blue, this is looking at home prices, pending sales from $1 million to $1.3 million. So you can see sales at $1.3 million, $1 million to $1.3 million jumped tremendously third quarter of 2020 compared to third quarter 2019 and 2018. Even the $1.3 million to $1.6 million, huge increase there. So that had the biggest increase of over 400% increase in pending sales in this price point compared with 2019. And then here's 2020. This is up to $2 million, so $1.6 million to $2 million. And this is the sales of $2 million or more. This is just single family homes in Bend less than an acre. So I'm not showing acreage property at all. And when I define Bend here, this is my definition of Bend. This is Bend that does not include Sun River. So these figures are just, if you try to pull this up yourself on MLS, you'd probably get a different information because MLS by default is including Sun River. So this again shows how much increase there is in the high end. This is third quarter. And the other thing I wanted to show here is months of supply. So again, this is third quarter. In 2018, we had roughly between 8-9 months supply of homes in the high end. 2019, it dropped, except at the very highest end. But now look at 2020. So even though in Bend itself, these figures are included in my Bend stats. So if you think about it, we have still 3 to 4 months supply, still a seller's market in the super high end. This data is also pulled into all of Bend when you do the stats for all of Bend. So we are skewed right now in Bend in the luxury, the $1 million plus market, which is why there is nothing if you look at the lower end. We are selling things very quickly, and even in the high end, even though there's more inventory there, it is still a seller's market, which is why we're seeing people sticking to their guns on their price, even at the high end. And over the last couple of months, we've been working with some very high-end buyers who are coming from out of the area. We're talking cash buyers or people with a huge down payment who are trying to negotiate with some sellers. And we have sellers who are being very, no, the price is the price. Maybe willing to work a little bit with the buyer, but in a lot of cases, it's like take it or leave it, because there's going to be someone else who will jump in there. And so we're having out-of-town buyers getting more realistic and recognize, if I really truly want this house, even this high-end house where I'm used to negotiating and getting some wiggle room on price or terms or something, they're really having to adhere a lot to what the sellers want in these transactions. So that's our market. Any comments on this and what you are seeing yourselves when you're out there working with your clients? Yeah, anyone? Anyone have any comments about this?
I have a couple of buyers that are just totally frustrated, and yeah, it's hard to, keep them engaged because prices just keep escalating and they don't want to pay that much. So I don't know what they're going to do. I don't think they're going to buy.
And that's really frustrating because these are people you've been working with. And I think for a lot of buyers right now, it's got to be them determining what are their priorities and what is really most important for them. Is it to live in Bend? If they need to move to Central Oregon, would Redmond work for them? Could they find a property outside of Bend proper that would still fit their needs? And to prioritize what their needs really are. If their goal is to live in downtown Bend within walking distance of, the old mill and Franklin, most likely they're going to have to pay a premium for that. So maybe their priorities need to be reevaluated if their goal is to pay a certain price. I know it's frustrating, Colleen, it really is. A key, again, working with anybody is to be the real estate professional and to show them these charts and show them stats and say, this is what we're dealing with. So if your goal is to really be strong in there, and when a new listing hits the market that will fit their need, to go in there with their best offer right from the start. Talk to the listing agent. Find out what works best for the seller as far as a closing date. Write that into your offer. Find out, does the seller need to occupy after closing? And can your buyer then afford to say, we're not going to charge you any rent at all if you need to occupy for a month after closing? I mean, that's been a key for a couple of our situations in which buyers have gotten the home, especially if they have to get a loan, because they're going to have out-of-pocket costs paying a loan. But with most loans, you don't pay that first month. It's the second month that you pay. So using that to recognize, to have your client recognize the reality of what they're dealing with. And we all know cash offers are over, that's displacing a lot of lenders, unfortunately. A lot of the offers that come in with a loan, it's challenging for our clients who need to get a loan. How does a jumbo loan work in the market? What we're seeing with jumbo loans right now is jumbo loans for a period of time weren't even offered. They're now starting to come back in, and I'm seeing some jumbo loans being written in which we have gotten ratified contracts. It's usually, as long as that buyer is putting a large amount of money down, there's less concern for a seller if the property doesn't appraise at the inflated price, because they're just coming back and saying the price is the price. Buyer, you pay the difference in cash. And if they're putting down a large down payment, the loan is still fully covered with the appraisal. So that's what I'm seeing. It's nice to have lenders come back into the market offering the jumbo loan, because for a period of time that wasn't even happening with when COVID first hit, but now they're back again. Any other questions? How about haves or wants? Anyone have haves or wants? Things that we can talk about that are coming, new listings that you know about, any haves or wants for anybody? Nobody haves or wants? Okay, well, if we don't have anything else, then have a great day, and let me know if there's anything we can do to help you. Brittany's going to be gone for the next week as well, so Emily and I are here helping and handling everything. Thanks so much, guys. Okay, bye-bye.